Good morning, everyone. I am John O'Loughlin. Welcome to my channel. It's called McDuff, Kennedy's Man to Smash the CIA. And this morning, I'm reading part 2 of my reprise of The Secret Team by Fletcher Prouty. I'm going to check my audio for a second. Hang on. Make sure we're all hooked up here. All right, we're all here. Hello, Tyrone and Corky and Kathy and everybody else. Well, it's a busy day for everyone. I know people are out campaigning, poll watching the cars roll into the polling places, as I just went to mine and voted. And it was the same experience I've had every year since I've moved down here to Mystery Island, where we have a local elementary school, and the same people usually show up to be the election workers. I did election work one time. I found it to be a long day, and didn't sign up the next year just because I didn't think I had the stamina for it. It's a lot of standing up all day, like 10, 12 hours. So bravo to the folks that make it possible, all the election workers and the people that are out there campaigning at the last minute. I wish you well and stay warm. It's a little chilly this morning here in southern Maryland. Okay, Living Soul, you say the audio's 5x5. I'll take it. And great. Yep, everybody go and vote. Oh. There's an old lyric from, well, I know a lot of old country songs. A lot of them have bad lyrics in them you wouldn't want to repeat today, but this one was kind of funny. It went, let's see, when I got married, my wife, she got my goat, 'cause instead of cooking dinner, she had to go and vote. I was dissatisfied. Well, everybody's going to go and vote today. Hey, Jane, great to have you here. George and I were looking into a man who was the supervisor of Chicago FBI office for 20 years or so. His name was Mervyn W. Johnson. And I thought it was interesting. George picked up on it and said, that's a very unusual name. So I started looking into it, and I realized, hey, I know that name from somewhere. Well, it's Bissell's middle name. His name was Richard Mervyn Bissell. And Bissell being one of the real disgusting, murderous, I won't even try to describe who he was and his character, except for to say, I'm so glad that we are here to expose the facts and not necessarily here to throw a bunch of adjectives at people. We just want people to see the facts, and I think we're going to all be changing history as we continue this study of my dad's life and the real life of our military as affected and and perverted to the use of secret hands behind the scene. And that is the theme of our book today, The Secret Team by Fletcher Prouty. Anyway, Jane, it was interesting to me that Mervyn and Morvan seem to both be related, and related also to the name Merlin of the Arthurian legends. So, not implying anything, just reporting what I saw yesterday, Jane. It's interesting. Maybe you could, if you've ever done it, sort out whether Morvan is perhaps a variation of Mervyn, and from there Merlin. Because they do, they rely on these concepts from legends and history that like Mercury and Jupiter and Saturn. All of these mystical presences are are useful in many ways to these spooks in developing their psychological warfare. Gotta use my mute button and have some coffee. Morvan Hills in where, in England? I'm interested, but I'm not going to uh, put you on the spot, Jane. It's interesting. Morvan Hills in Scotland. Oh, okay. I actually had a virtual music concert yesterday. It was one of the groups that usually every year I do live shows for, and they asked me to do a virtual one yesterday. So I got my partners together, Julia on violin and Larry on his very interesting old instrument that he calls a Brach, a B-R-A-C-H, and that's a kind of like a long-necked mandolin or but a little bit more of an earlier design, so it fits with the 18th century. Get smart, 99. 99. Yeah, boy, all those crazy spook shows. But yeah, I'm of that generation. When you said 99, I looked up. I'd say, "Oh, I want to see her. She was cute." Well, maybe I'm feeling good today. Maybe I am. I hope you are. I think one thing we can say for absolute certainty is that President Trump has put himself into this fight 1,000%. He has been an incredible trooper, going everywhere needed, always there when he's doing 2, 3, 4 campaign stops a day, and still dancing at the end of the night, just to contrast himself with the basement dweller, Mr. Biden. Well, the country's going to go on no matter what happens, but we're under terrible, terrible pressure right now to collapse into a imperial colony for the purpose of making America Great Britain again. Doesn't that really summarize the whole thing? That, it's the difference between my dad and those people that decided to work for the secret team. Because they're Anglophiles. They think Great Britain is the greatest country in the world, not America. And how do they have that growing up in this country? Well, that goes back to old family wealth and working for old families and, growing up in a way that you respect the Dulleses and the Bissells and the all of that insane. I'm just going to tell you right now, it's over, guys. It's over. First of all, your idea that you can control us by mind control techniques is completely false. You can't do it. Our Creator gave us certain innate abilities to smell bullshit. And you guys are full of bullshit. Secret team, It really is. It's like a horrible science fiction book written by Isaac Asimov, where you decide, because you're so damn smart and so entitled, that the best thing you can do with your life is to destroy the cultures, the lives, the families, the entire history of massive populations all over the world. And for what? Not for the country that we are supposed to work for. No, you're doing it for this ancient empire. And you're doing it because you're scared. You're scared to stand up for your rights. And you'd rather wear that swastika on your arm than stand up for the rights of humanity. God damn you. Well, forgive me for that. All right, we're going to read a kind of a very important, like yesterday's version of revision or revised visit to the secret team was basically about how they insinuated themselves into all of our government agencies, as well as has been documented elsewhere, into the corporations and the local businesses and local government. But we're talking here about the government of the United States and its intelligence agencies run amok, taking over and doing things behind the president's back that the president doesn't even know about, making up a system in which they plant people into all the different powerful agencies of the government without anybody knowing it. And these, they call them their focal points. And you have a focal point in the Pentagon, and you have a focal point in the State Department, and you have focal points everywhere. So that if Alan Dulles, who is, the king of this secret team empire, says he needs something done, and you need somebody at the Department of Agriculture to approve some type of a plan that he has, maybe shipping tractors to Iran, when we know it's not really tractors, it's military hardware of great value. Well, you need somebody in the agriculture department to give it a nod and a wink and say, oh yeah, that's just a box of tractor parts. So you don't give it to the agriculture department generally and say, hey, can you sign off on this? No, you have your focal point. And you have a focal point in every agency. And that was just starting under Fletcher Prouty in the Air Force in 1955. So think that it's been 65 years, 65 years, right? That they've been insinuating themselves secretly into our agencies. And there's a contact for the CIA in every single office in this government at this point. Or maybe they all work for the CIA. I suspect maybe people at NOAA or NASA, maybe they're all part of the secret team now. Because we're getting awful close to that point where the LaRouche organization says that we're going to go off the cliff, as he's described it with his 4 laws and the chart that you can see where, the elites are just going way up and everybody else is going to go off a cliff as soon as they stop subsidizing our stock market with quantitative easing, aka printing money. Oh, they got me angry today, don't they? Well, I think of my dad over my shoulder here and, the flag that he fought for and the freedoms that the flag stands for and the freedoms that he died for. And I think it's appropriate that we be angry, mad as hell at these spooks, these secret team manipulators of our lives and our families and our parents and our children. God damn. Okay, I am now going to read a section that leads up to the creation of SACSA and understand, how important it is to understanding my dad's career that we understand how and why SACSA was created. So let's get into that. Yeah, good morning, Brightmore. The Great Reset is the next battle, yeah. I put out a hashtag today on Twitter. It says upset the reset. Yeah, upset the reset and give us back our economy. Give us back our real value. I don't know about that living soul. I didn't remember that. That's an interesting incident with. Anyway, so here we have from yesterday. Fletcher Prouty is assigned by his boss, General White, the Chief of Staff of the Air Force. Excuse me. To set up an office where the CIA comes for one-stop shopping with all the Air Force, you know, abilities, systems, weapons, planes, personnel, at the beck and call of the CIA, of Allen Dulles. And so Fletcher Prouty does that because that's what he's ordered to do. And he sets it up in just the way that was prescribed by Allen Dulles, the director of CIA. And Dulles wanted to have a focal point everywhere. So now we're going to focus on the focal point in the Pentagon as we approach the creation of SACSA. Oh, my living soul, I'm so sorry for your loss. You know, that's the thing. I don't pretend to be unique in this situation. As a matter of fact, I'm putting my dad's story out there so other people like yourself can recognize that we've been manipulated, we've been fooled, we've been abused, we've been bent, folded, spindled, and mutilated. And we're going to have to get over this. And if President Trump is reelected, then we are going to work. We're going to start pushing to get this done. And I'm not even thinking about the opposite outcome because it's not going to happen. You know, this country, you've seen all the people out in the parking lots, at the airfields, and, you know, thousands and thousands of people. I think all the late voting is going to be Trump voting. Okay, I'm going to start reading on page 471. It's immediately following the inauguration of President Kennedy. And you remember in that speech he made, in his inauguration speech, he talked about his plan for America to be a sister, a leader, a helper, a mentor to all the free people that are going to emerge out of colonialism after the end of World War II. And his hope for America is the hope that we will continue to be leading by example and not by force. The opposite of the Dulles plan. Almost immediately following the inauguration of President Kennedy, the secret team saw that the door was wide open. Now, the secret team, of course, is this creature that Allen Dulles has created with the help of Fletcher Prouty in the Air Force and others in other agencies, and that's all going to come together now in SACSA. So forgive me for interrupting myself, but very, very keyed up this morning, and I'm very hopeful. Man, if we win this election, I'm going to be so happy. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to jump up and down. Almost immediately following the inauguration, the secret team saw that the door was wide open, with practically no National Security Council meetings, and therefore no National Security Council to effectively control the CIA. There was no application of those crucial parts of the National Security Act of 1947 that require the National Security Council to direct the agency. Without such direction and control, the CIA was practically free to act on its own. Few men in the new government had any idea of what was being put into shape for the Cuban invasion. Those who did knew only bits and pieces of the whole plan. These men were not accustomed to the double talk and undercover language and actions of the agency. They heard briefings, but they did not know what they really meant. On the other hand, a large number of the new Kennedy team were old CIA hands. They did know exactly what was going on, and they used their special knowledge and experience to further isolate those who did not. There it is. The CIA guys know who each other are, and they take a guy like my dad and they isolate him. Well, my dad fought back, as we know from TDY and so many other incidents that, he wasn't going to let him win, and neither am I, and neither are you, and neither are we. They're not going to win this. There is a peculiar and dangerous characteristic that derives from the continuing application of secrecy. In an open government such as this country has been accustomed to having, it is only natural to believe that if a man is a firefighter, then his job has to do with putting out fires. And if he is a soldier, that his job is being prepared for war. In a simpler sense, government workers are trained to expect that if the men in the next office are working on the military aid program for Pakistan, then those men are doing that work. Customarily, if they meet those occupants of that next-door office in the snack bar or the dining hall, they might be expected to ask them how things are going in Pakistan. Now, if the men who are supposed to be working on the Pakistan aid program are not working on the program at all, but are actually working on a special support program for the Border Police of India, and the Pakistan aid program is simply a cover story, then whatever they tell their office neighbors is part of their cover story too. In other words, it is false. More plainly, a lie. However, they justify that lie as being permissible, in fact necessary, because they've been told that the, quote, Border Police Project is highly classified and that they cannot tell anyone about it. So if you are on a classified project, it is all right. In fact, it is essential for you to lie. So you lie. The other man lies. Everyone lies. But it's all supposed to be for the good of the cause. Over a period of time, this can develop many strange situations, too involved to mention here, but one or two examples may be useful. In the Pentagon, there are many offices established to do one thing. They really do not do that thing at all, but something entirely different. As a result, there are hundreds and even thousands of men who either cannot say what they are doing, or if they are forced to say something, they must lie. The polite thing is to say that they are, quote, following their cover story. This can lead to further complications. Even within the cover story scheme, there will be factions. Some men may be working on a certain project with a cover story, and others may be working on exactly the same project under another cover story, and neither group will know about the other. It reminds me of McTavish. You guys know all about McTavish? It's the McTavish brothers. And, since I'm in a crazy mood today, I'll share this one with you. It's to the tune of the Irish Washerwoman. And it goes like this. Oh, McTavish is dead, and his brother don't know it. His brother is dead, and McTavish don't know it. They're both of them dead, and they're in the same bed, and neither one knows that the other one's dead. So that's what we got. We got secret teams that are right next to each other, working on the same project, but they don't know it, and they lie to each other. And that's what the Pentagon is full of, these little groups in different cubby holes and offices working their cover stories. And they've been doing it for decades. We have to take this very seriously, guys. This is the secret team infiltrating on behalf of the powers behind the scenes, the elites, those self-appointed rulers of humanity. Later, when the secretary or some group will know, later when the secretary or some other high official wants to be briefed, he may meet with one group and not the other, simply because the first group did not know of the other's existence. And he will not hear the whole story. He will hear only the first group's version of the activity. So it is not that the new Kennedy team was not properly briefed about anti-Castro activities, as it was a matter of the inability of any one briefing officer to give all the facts at one time. There may have been no way to have rounded up all the facts and present them. So much of what was going on was decentralized. In spite of this, each briefing officer may have thought that he knew all the facts, and that he was telling the whole truth, as happened when Tracy Barnes was sent to give Adlai Stevenson his briefing at the United Nations. Other complications crept in. Under the cover of the Bay of Pigs operation, much bigger moves were being made. Interesting, isn't it? All over the world, the MAP, that's Military Assistance Program, training program, was picking up volume and momentum. Thousands of foreigners from all 40 countries converged upon the United States for training and indoctrination. The new curriculum was either the one at Fort Bragg or like it. By the way, I have a picture of my father with a class at Fort Bragg, where it wasn't a long course. He just went in there as an executive to learn what they teach to the people from around the world. So just to point out, since we hit this in the book, that for the record, my dad did go to a course, I think it was a week or two, at Fort Bragg, and I have a photo of him there. 65, I think. The Army interest in political, social, economic programs under the general concept of nation building was gaining momentum. For every class of foreigners who were trained and indoctrinated with these ideas, there were American instructors and American soldiers who were being brainwashed by the very fact that they were being trained to teach this new doctrine. Now, guys, what is the new doctrine? The new doctrine is Ed Lansdale's. The new doctrine is divide and conquer. The new doctrine is false flag attacks. The new doctrine is kill people on both sides with snipers and blame each other, like the McTavishes. Well, they're both dead now. So Americans are being trained along with these foreigners, but they don't really understand it because they're teaching, and by teaching they absorb the ideas that they're teaching, and it becomes an army way of thinking. These instructors did not know otherwise. To them, this new, non-military, political, social, and economic theme was the true doctrine of the U.S. Army. A whole generation of the American Army has grown up with this and now believes, to one degree or another, that the natural role of an army lies in this political field. And they also believe that an army mixes some medical and educational ingredients into this nation building. They believe the Army is the chosen instrument in nation building, whether the subject be political, social, economic, or military. In many cases, due to the great emphasis the CIA has placed on training the police forces of certain foreign countries, a large number of American servicemen who were used for such training became active in what was really police work and not the scope of regular military work. It was the CIA, with the help of a few other agencies, that put together the Inter-American Police Academy during the early Kennedy years, which played such an important part in emphasizing national police power in the nations of Latin America. The CIA brought in police instructors from all over the United States and from the military for this school. The success of this school, operating covertly from an army base in the Canal of Panama, led to other schools in the United States that have carried on this type of work for police forces in this country. Part of the impetus behind the great buildup in the strength of police force all over the country dates back to this CIA Police Academy work and to other schools it spawned. This police work was not only involved training, but integrated new weapons, new procedures, and new techniques into American police work, some of which has been good, and much of which has been quite ominous. Anyone who doubts that this nation-building and police activity has not become real and very effective right here in the United States need only visit the area around Fort Bragg to find one of these early paramilitary CIA-oriented specialists, a General Tolson, sending his American soldiers out into the countryside with nation-building programs for the citizens of the United States. If such tactics continue, it is possible that an enlargement of such a program could lead to a pacification program of areas of the United States, such as the CIA and the U.S. Army have carried out in Indochina. You want to get pacified? I don't. At the same time this training program was underway, larger and larger civic action teams and other benevolently named organizations spread throughout the world. MAG units were no longer small logistics and training organizations. They had grown to large size and were frequently and almost augmented by large units on temporary duty in the host country. All of this is a game. The secrecy can't mean a thing to the host country. They know exactly how many men are there, and it means no difference to them whether they are Army or Army TDY or Army cover. By the same token, the Soviet embassy and all other embassies will know exactly how many Army men are there, and to them the fine distinction makes no difference. The only people these devices fool are Americans, American reporters, American congressmen, American government specialists, and of course the American public. There's almost no way in which anyone in the United States states government could unravel the whole clandestine business, but at least a beginning was made as a result of a most unexpected series of events, and a result of some very shrewd and clever work by Bobby Kennedy and his closest associates. What had grown secretly and almost totally unobserved within the infrastructure of the United States was by 1961 so large that it was time to bring it to life and give it some reason for existence. While Jack Kennedy and Bobby Kennedy were seriously pondering what had gone wrong with the Bay of Pigs operation, this new doctrine and new organization was emerging. It remained necessary, then, for the Kennedys to find the master key to all of this activity. It took the Bay of Pigs Board of Inquiry to perform this feat. The day-by-day litany of the board was designed to indoctrinate Bobby Kennedy and to win him over to this new doctrine of counterinsurgency, flexible response, civic action, nation-building, and the rest, and through him to win over the president. While the board was meeting day after day in the back room in the Pentagon, something more important than the fate of the Bay of Pigs was being discussed. As witness after witness filed through the board's chambers, Bobby Kennedy sat there saying absolutely nothing, just soaking up the hearings and searching for cracks in the story. At the same time, Allen Dulles and Maxwell Taylor paraded a hand-picked group of disciples into the room for interviews and questioning. These men were selected to preach the doctrine of the new covert intervention. Their interviews were designed to train, indoctrinate, and to use an overworked term even to brainwash Bobby Kennedy. What he heard each day was the Maxwell Taylor new military plan for flexible response theme, blended with the White House committee report material and topped off by Allen Dulles' own theme of secret operations. This was a most heady mixture, and it was effective. Some of the men who were called to talk about the tactics of the Bay of Pigs had not been connected with it at all, but were Special Forces men from the Army staff or directly from Fort Bragg. Bobby Kennedy emerged from the incessant catechism of the, quote, truths, ready to soak up the doctrine of counterinsurgency. The Kennedy administration became hooked on counterinsurgency, and the indoctrination occurred to a good measure right there in the Board of Inquiry process. Thus, the inner Kennedy clan came out of the Bay of Pigs disaster with two strong convictions. Closely held and deeply felt was the conviction that the CIA had somehow done them in, and that they had better be extremely wary of anything it did in the future. This was a very deep feeling and only seldom revealed in any official actions. In fact, Jack Kennedy developed a cover story of his own by giving the appearance as much as possible in public that he could go along with the CIA, when private actions and discussions tended to support otherwise. The second conviction was that the world was being divided sharply into two strong camps in the battle between the world of choice and the world of coercion. It was President Kennedy who said to Chairman Khrushchev, quote, "The great revolution in the history of man, present, past, and future, is the revolution of those determined to be free," unquote. Wow. Well, we are the revolution determined to be free. That's who we are. The Dulles contribution to this philosophy was the reiteration of the Khrushchev challenge to support all wars of national liberation, and the Maxwell Taylor contribution was the simple reflex of the counterpuncher, the plan of flexible response. Defined in terms of the infantryman, this meant counterinsurgency. This is one of the great themes of Allen Dulles that we first developed when we were reading The Brothers by Stephen Kinzer, and also Blowback. Blowback by, I can't remember the author's name there. He's at American University now. Christopher Simpson, wonderful book, Blowback. So those introduce us to the idea that Dulles was not actively seeking information to help us defend the country. He instead was looking for opportunities to insert his secret teams and take things over. So that's why Maxwell Taylor's suggestion of a reactive force fits so easily into the Dulles plan, that we're not going to go out there to help people in a big way to establish their countries like President Kennedy had promised. No, we're going to look for opportunities to insinuate our secret teams into other people's countries and thereby undermine them, bring them down, take them over, and enslave or murder their population. Pardon me. One of the better definitions of counterinsurgency as practiced in the Kennedy era was that written by a general who worked for the Secretary of Defense. Quote, counterinsurgency, the technique of using in appropriate combination all elements of national power in support of a friendly government which is in danger of being overthrown by an active communist campaign designed to organize, mobilize, and direct discontented elements of the local population against the government, unquote. Although counterinsurgency has been generally regarded as a military activity, careful analysis will reveal that it is really more a civilian-controlled action in the paramilitary area of operation. This is a most important consideration as we observe the country moving from the Roosevelt-Eisenhower era to the Kennedy-Johnson era, which includes Vietnam. Note also how the definition of counterinsurgency written by an Army general above closely allied with the CIA and with the authors of the President's Committee report almost precisely paraphrases sections of that report. Note that the same material written by the Office of Secretary of Defense spokesman continues as follows, colon, a successful counterinsurgency strategy requires, therefore, the integration of all U.S. government activities in the country involved, under the central leadership of the ambassador or the military area commander. In the final analysis, the defeat of a communist-led insurgency hinges largely on the effectiveness of the, quote, country team. This depends upon the willing cooperation of the government departments and agencies in Washington. When one realizes that this was written by a man who was for years the executive assistant to the Deputy Secretary of Defense, and in his own right an acknowledged leader in the new Army doctrine, he begins to see that this is another part of the pattern that was changing this country's entire traditional area of military action. We have a new doctrine at the Special Forces School. We have worldwide MAP training in the political, social, economic spheres. We have the new creed dramatically spelled out by the President's Committee report, and then, to tie all this together, we have the definition of counterinsurgency. We find the official version of counterinsurgency is not to be confused with the more or less public idea, which assumes that it is a form of anti-guerrilla fighting against communist-inspired rebels. The official doctrine of counterinsurgency states clearly that it is carried out under the central leadership of the ambassador. This means that counterinsurgency is intended to be civilian-directed, even though it appears to be a military program, and that the senior man is to be the ambassador. He's placed in charge not actually to be the country team commander-in-chief, but to make it possible for him to delegate his authority to the CIA station chief rather than to some senior military officer. And we read all about that in the Phoenix program by Douglas Valentine, another of the wonderful books that was purged by the YouTube purge last week. But I'll read that again on my channel here. I'm not stopping. I'm not going anywhere. I'll read the whole book again if YouTube refuses to do the right thing and put it back up. Why would a ranking U.S. Army general on a special assignment to the White House define the new training program for mutual security, and another ranking U.S. Army general on assignment to the Office of Secretary of Defense define the new method of warfare designed to counter the communist support of wars of national liberation, and both in terms of civilian direction of the military operations of U.S. forces? This is heretical. Why? The answer is simple. Although it has been buried under long years of the horrible disaster in Vietnam, both of these men were closely affiliated with and had served with the CIA, and both were the type of men who make up the secret team. Even though they wear the uniform of the U.S. Army, their primary allegiance has been with the secret team CIA. They saw that the time had come for the secret team to make its big move and for it to sweep out beyond the DoD and the CIA to form a massive paramilitary international power under para-civilian leadership and a monstrous cloak of security. Does that sound like what we're looking at with NATO today? Does that sound like what we're looking at with these generals that are, there to sell arms and make money, as opposed to run armies that protect and defend our country? It sounds like the same plan, This book is written in the 70s. The Joint Chiefs, for example, have recently established within the Joint Staff a special staff section dealing exclusively with the problem of counterinsurgency. Counterinsurgency is not susceptible to a purely military solution. It requires the closest possible coordination of political, economic, psychological, and there's a new word for this, and military actions. By the end of '62, this nation had gone so far down the line following the agency that new Special Forces doctrine, the Military Assistance Program, and the new U.S. philosophy, as outlined in the President's Committee report, that it was saying openly it was well on its way to carrying out as top national policy a major clandestine operation, so big, in fact, that the entire government would be involved. Obviously, it could not be really clandestine in that sense, since it would be kept secret, from our enemies. On the contrary, it was a new kind of clandestine, so it would be kept secret from all Americans. See, I find this to be the most valuable writing that we could have, because here he is exposing the sinews of it, exposing the guts of the secret team and how it was started, and the military officers like Maxwell Taylor that were just sycophants that would do whatever Allen Dulles wanted to advance their careers. I don't know. I mean, Maxwell Taylor's a hero militarily from World War II, but I can't look at him as a hero in retrospect of what he was doing to destroy the chain of command in the military. You can't have a military without a chain of command. And what Allen Dulles did was to simply throw his focal point people into every agency, every military department. And what's the effect? It destroys the chain of command. It takes away the power of the generals and the chiefs and gives it to the focal point officers as they integrate themselves into this great government conspiracy. And we, right now, today, Election Day 2020, are seizing back our government from these monsters. When such men stated that the war would be waged under civilian leadership and then named the ambassador as the commanding and senior officer, they were simply carrying out their usual cover story double talk. Any such counterinsurgency would be initiated by and directed by the CIA. Of course, the generals involved would be real generals, but they'd be working inside of and for the CIA, or in some cases not exactly inside the CIA, but certainly under its direction. Has it ever been properly explained why this country has retained an ambassador in Saigon since the first one was selected by the CIA to go to that new piece of real estate, a new nation called South Vietnam, back in 1954? Why should the longest war in which this country has ever been involved, and the second costliest and second most destructive, why should it have been waged through all these futile years under the direction of an ambassador? Is it because we entered this conflict to support what were at first minor CIA operations? Then when these actions grew and grew, there was never time when the war transitioned from clandestine operators to military operators. At the time, 1963 to 64, the ambassador could have been withdrawn in favor of the military commander as the escalation went into effect. Then the CIA chief should have been relegated to the fourth force role he should have had in a wartime situation. As late as the end of 63, even every U.S. Army combat soldier in Vietnam was under the operational control and direction of the CIA. One of the real reasons the Army got in there in the first place was because when the Marines came in, they refused to take the field under the CIA. Isn't that great? You see that? That's the CIA. The CIA's trying to use Ambassador Henry Cabot Lodge, Jr., the son of that racist, eugenicist senator from Massachusetts that we read about in the Guarded Gate a few months ago, another book that's been taken down by the overlords at YouTube. We'll get that one back up too. But the Marines said, no, we will not work under the command of the CIA. And who was that? That was General Victor Krulak, who became my dad's boss not much longer after that statement. General Krulak, this is after that statement. General Krulak, formerly the Special Assistant for Counterinsurgency and Special Activities on the Joint Staff, and then Commanding General of Fleet Marine Forces Pacific, knew too much about the CIA and its activities to permit his Marines to hit the beaches of Indochina under any command other than Marine and the U.S. Military Command Vietnam. So what it was Victor Krulak, the Marine General and the Commandant of the Marine Corps, later, was a highly decorated, respected general in World War II, and a specialist in landings, in amphibious landings, like happened at Leyte Gulf, and which I think, anyway, I've explained that in another show. So Krulak and my dad, O'Loughlin, are both put into SACSA, and we think it's because of a recommendation perhaps from MacArthur, who my dad must have worked with on the USS Nashville, that Daddy got that job. And so here he is working under Krulak, and then when Krulak leaves SACSA, he goes back, I think, to 3rd Marines and leads the 3rd Marines in Vietnam. But he says, no, I won't work under the CIA. And why? Because he'd been at SACSA and he saw how the CIA operates and how disastrous it would be to put men under his command under the command of a CIA flunky. General Krulak, formerly the SACSA, and then commanding general of Fleet Marine Forces Pacific, knew too much about the CIA and its activities to permit his Marines to hit the beaches of Indochina under any command other than Marine. Kennedy undoubtedly saw the beginnings of this serious problem after the Bay of Pigs investigation. At the time, he wrote two very powerful National Security Action Memorandums, NSAM 55 and NSAM 57. Both were issued from the White House in June of 1961. NSAM 55 was a brief memorandum of greatest significance, which was addressed directly to the chairman and was signed by the president. In essence, it said that the chairman would be responsible for all action of a military nature during peacetime, in the same manner as he was during war. One way to interpret this in light of the then current events would be no more Bay of Pigs. This was a powerful memorandum. It was, in fact, more positive as an action against the non-addressees than it was to the addressor, to the addressee, the Joint Chiefs. I was the officer responsible for briefing this paper to General Lemnitzer and the other chiefs of staff, and that NSAM rested in my files. There need be no misunderstanding about what it meant. This was an unusual memorandum because Kennedy sent it directly to the chairman and sent information copies only to McNamara, Rusk, and Allen Dulles. Well, just a few pages later, we get to the creation of SACSA, which was going to be my goal to get to this morning. But we've just expired our hour, and perhaps because I expressed a little bit of my own personal feelings during this show, I didn't get to my goal. So we'll finish this up on Thursday when we introduce the beginning of SACSA and exactly how the secret team and people like my dad got manipulated by them during the 60s and 70s. Thanks for being with me this morning. I appreciate it, and I hope you get as much out of these readings as I do. It's something that we all need to work on as American citizens if we don't want to just become subjects. Have a great day. I'll be with you tonight at 8 o'clock to read some more from Doug Valentine's Strength of the Wolf. Interesting how we learned that Kennedy wanted to dismember the Air America airline, the CIA's proprietary airline. We learned that from Doug in our reading the other night. So, more Doug Valentine tonight at 8 p.m. Have a great day. Thanks again.